Okay, so this is my little 15-minute spot on online learning during COVID. My name's Stephen Colber. I've been teaching for a decade now. The things I'm most interested in are instructional video, flipped learning. I'm involved in some charity work with Teachers Across Borders Australia, and I run an academic research group for teachers essentially. So just for a bit of context, I think when you're doing online learning it requires four things. You need an LMS, so you need some sort of a system. As a kind of early career or soon to be teacher, you probably won't know about these, and you probably won't need to until you kind of told which one you're doing, but it's probably useful to be as across Google and Microsoft as you can be, because they're sort of the two primary choices, unless you go to a religious or independent or private school, in which case they will have usually a better and more expensive LMS than the two provided there. Obviously there's online stuff, offline stuff that you don't have to focus on too much. For us anyway, at Brunswick Secondary College, there's asynchronous, so things that are available at any time, video, and then there's of course live video conferencing. So you've probably, I would hope, been asked to do a little bit of both, and the thing that I mostly talk about is asynchronous video. So you're just making it more accessible and more available to your students. For me anyway, the three big challenges for online learning are engagement, collaboration and connection. So engagement is easy, but engagement that actually meets your learning goals maybe is not as easy. Collaboration is something that is a massive focus of online learning, which is less true of in-class learning, because you can do a whole range of different things. But collaboration, if you're not collaborating in online teaching, then your students probably aren't showing up ultimately. And connection is much harder to do as well, because you don't have those micro interactions with students where you go around and sort of, check in, notice small things about your students. So this is kind of a grid that I've combined those four elements with the three levels of engagement that I think are key. I'm not going to talk through those, but this to me is a really useful rubric to think about how you're achieving all of those aims, and the reason why we use a combination of all four of those things. So obviously, everyone's learning as we go, making it up as we go along. So to me, my big thing, as I said, is instructional video. There's some research here that you might want to chase up. I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but increasingly the TPAC model tells us that technology, pedagogy and content are all important, and during remote learning the technology part is emphasized perhaps, but the thing you really need to be thinking about is pedagogy first and foremost. So think of the readings and the things that you've been practicing and talking about first, and then think of the technology that can help you achieve those. So I'm hoping I can give you a bit of an insight into those things as we go through. I've got some stuff that I'm just going to skip here. Again, some research if you want to follow up. I won't talk through this in too much detail. Most of what I'll be doing is giving you a bit of an overview of online learning from my perspective, and then I'll be giving you sort of courses you can follow up on and resources you can look at to sort of, if any of this stuff appeals. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there on the internet produced by me and many others to this effect. So again, just skipping over this to save time. Basically, to make a video, you're either using your camera, recording a meeting, or online broadcast studio or software, OBS, which is free. There's other options that cost money, but we're all about free forever and always, and so that's the tool that I use. You can also do it in Microsoft Stream if that's something that you have access to. Flipgrid is really good for the kind of collaboration aspect. Students go in and record short little responses, short little videos to prompts usually, so you can ask any question, you can get students to work out things out loud. It's really good for the metacognition element, but also the collaboration especially. You get stuff around with Snapchat filters if you want to make your meetings a little bit more interesting. It's something my wife and I did, as you can see, and it sort of made things a little bit more interesting in the long time we spent remote learning. I'm going to show you this because I think it's interesting. You can buy, like an $8 clip. This is obviously an older iPhone now, but there's a lot of different ways that you can just sort of produce a video without really paying for anything or having any particularly valuable or expensive setup. So a couple of rules, and whatever camera you've got on your laptop or your phone or iPad, whatever device you've got in front of you. A lot of people have been doing this. These aren't pictures of me necessarily, but different ways you can do similar things. So this is an example of how you can have a document camera without paying any money for a document camera, and similar experiments, all those sort of things. So obviously you're primary school trained, I guess, and so the question is why would you use video? And to me, the reason is you're trying to empower yourself, basically. So you're the most expert person in the room, and though you may not feel like that at some times, and that's true for me as well. A video allows me to basically communicate with my students at different levels. So I might have a group over here watching a video. Then I might be working with the higher group. We call this station rotation. It's kind of, for me as a high school teacher, it's kind of new and out there. For primary school pedagogy, maybe it's not. But having videos basically means that you don't need to be kind of sitting with all of the groups necessarily at the same time. There can be some things that are just, okay, watch the video, write down any questions you have, or watch the video, follow the steps, those sort of things. And that has been very useful in my practice. And of course the goal, which few of us reach, is the full flip, which is kind of the way that your university course, I imagine, is taught, in the sense that you do all the reading and much of the content outside of class time, perhaps through a lecture or an online lecture now, but then you come back and you have a tutorial where you sort of do the nitty-gritty and the human stuff. And so to me, we're using the technology of instructional video to make our classes more human rather than the opposite. So for the learning, like I said, I'm going to keep this bit really short because I can go on for hours and often do sessions on this sort of thing. This course is free. It's only just come out September 1st, so quite recently. There's a mixture of teachers such as myself, academics, neuroscientists, and just a whole range of people giving really useful insights into online learning, how to do it properly, and sort of the research that sits behind it. So this is what I'll be watching during my holidays to kind of check in on how I've been doing and how it fits in with our understanding of online learning, research, the brain, all those sort of things, as well as, of course, pedagogy being the key. By the time you're watching this, this will probably have come out. I did some work with ClickView to develop a course that is a lot clearer and a lot more specific than this. You might need a Victorian kind of education login or email to access ClickView, or ask around. I'm sure there's a couple of people that will have access that might be able to give it to you if that's something you're interested in. This is a Monash course, Online Teaching Interactivity. It's much more text-based than the Teaching Online Masterclass course. So it's probably a bit more native to the kind of learning you're doing now with, references, research and so forth. Matthew Fifield and some colleagues of him put this together, and a number of myself and a number of colleagues sort of contributed examples of what this sort of looks like. So it's another one to look into. If you've got some money lying around, there's the Flip Learning Global Initiative, and they have a whole range of courses, Flip Learning 1, 2, 3. They cost money, but you get like incredible value for the price. So even though I've contributed to some of these courses, I still pay for them because it helps me to sort of bridge the gap between what's happening the best of the world and how they're actually doing online learning rather than just staying in our local bubble. Again, more free things, so I'd highly recommend jumping on Twitter. I'll talk about that at the end in a moment. Teachers Education Review is a really good podcast that I contribute to. My colleague Ollie Lovell runs the Educational Research Reading Room, and this is kind of for people that have finished their teaching qualifications, but the type of people that are sort of still engaged in the sort of education debate in an ongoing way and engaged with the research of teaching and learning as well. So yeah, Flip Learning Global and the Monash course is listed there as well. If you want to sort of pause, screenshot, I don't know, whatever we do on the internet nowadays, to take note of where you might find those. I'm just going to give you some ideas from my own personal practice. These are the things that worked best for me in remote learning, just to sort of give you a bit of an insight into what it was like and sort of how it worked for me. So to start off, every lesson I do a daily check-in question. There's always the issue of sort of marking the role, how you do that, whether you actually manually call it out, by saying each student's name and having them come off mute, which takes a long time. For me, I just put a post and a sort of stimulus question. Yesterday was, what's your favourite soft drink? And then blah, 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 blah. So that means when I start the actual meeting with the students, often they come into the meeting and I'm already laughing from the things that they've been saying or the way that they've been interacting with one another in the thread, and you can sort of get that kind of connection happening right from the start. And often the first 5 or 10 minutes will be kind of just asking people to tell us a bit more detail. For example, last week was, what's your go-to order from the fish and chip shop, and then our student from Hong Kong was talking about how they don't have a fish and chip shop, of course, because it's not Australia, but how, his favourite seafood restaurant, and he was talking us through that. So kind of getting that connection, getting to know your students in ways that perhaps you wouldn't if you weren't actually doing online learning, so that's really valuable. These are just some apps. There's a lot of people who kind of tell you apps as though they're like things that will solve the world's problems, or anything like that. These are some of the ones that I used just to kind of get students alive and awake. So small little games just to kind of check in, to get them engaged, connected, and then kind of often as a reward, you've worked really well, the assessment was due. You can either give them a consolidation or a lesson off, or get them to actually do some fun stuff together. Ask my students to songs is usually a good way to do the connection piece. What's your favourite happy song, what's your favourite sad song, what's a song that you listen to while you're studying, those sort of things. Obviously we wouldn't recommend students listen to music while they study, but hey. In terms of specific activities, collaboration, like I foreshadowed, is super important in my eyes. Barrier games is a classic EAL activity where one person can see the information and the others can't, and they have to explain it. It's really useful for oracy and sort of written expression. So you can see our picture of Voldemort on the left. That's what the person was describing to us, the student. And then there's some pictures of what we drew from her description, and then on the right hand side the picture that he chose, and then the drawings that we drew based on his description. So again, it's just kind of getting them, only a short sort of warmer activity. One of my big things is Socratic circles, getting students speaking to one another without the teacher kind of leading the discussion or asking open or closed questions, getting them speaking around a core article or activity, a core piece of reading, something like that, giving them some time beforehand to think about it. Basically, inner circle discusses, outer circle keeps track and assesses, and then they swap. Collaborative grouping is super important, so whatever LMS you're using, you're always trying to wangle or work out a way that you can get students into either random groups or groups of your choosing, and getting them to interact, because it's very easy to do remote learning in a way that's very dictatorial. I'm talking and you're listening, one-sided and passive, and that's of course not what we want. If you're doing film text or watching any clips, it's probably best to do sort of a live stream video, so all your class is watching it together and then tapping away, typing comments and questions as they go along. I found that to be very useful and a little bit more engaging than sending students off always to just watch the videos and then return and check in. There's a big question about equity. So what you normally, especially as a new teacher, your habit would just be to either be too kind of biased towards one of the genders, or biased towards either the high or the low group of students. For my case, I would like to say it's a bit of both in all directions, but of course everyone still has inherent biases within them. And so for this, whether you use actual physical popsicle sticks with the names of students on them to call during an online meeting, that's a really useful way to do it, or get a cheap little app like this, or an Excel spreadsheet some people use, just so that you've got different students that you're calling on, so you're not just necessarily always asking the students who have their camera on, their microphone working. You kind of want all of your students involved rather than just the ones that you naturally lean towards asking. So I've been asked to give a little bit of a summary of TeachMeet, so just so that you're aware, I think this is 2007, somewhere like that. TeachMeets are basically teachers getting together and talking and sharing. And so here's the basic premise, really short presentations, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, 2 minutes, very short little sessions on something that you've been working on, similar to the sort of things that I've just spoken about. It's open to everyone, no one pays for it, and people just sort of put these events on at their school or at kind of organisations who sort of offer up their rooms and run little sessions. Basically, over the last 2 years I've run a fair few. As I said, they're very useful for an early career teacher to kind of see what teachers talk about when they get together. Perhaps some of the best teachers, I would suggest, because they're giving up their time to just go and talk about education as a job, as a thing to do for free. And then obviously recently we've had to do these online, so there's a couple of articles there that talk about this and how that went about. The thing that brought us on board first was the bushfires, if you remember back to the start of the year when that happened. So we pulled together sort of some of the leading lights of education, and we put on kind of like something like a telethon web conference, and people shared their ideas. And then the first session was run by New South Wales on Microsoft Teams, and we had a couple of 100 people there. And then since then, that's something that I've been running from now going forward. So if you search for bit.ly/tmmelb, Teach Meet Melbourne for short, you can see all the old videos that we've done. And this one up next in term 4 is of course free to everyone to join as well, about how do we teach intercultural understanding and connecting with Asia. So the sort of things that you're probably more familiar with than us, the kind of general capabilities and the ACU standards, those sort of things, we kind of as professionals have to kind of reassess and re-engage with those ideas at different points. So that's something else. The academic research group I run, I'm going to throw that out there because again it's a free PD thing that can get you collaborating with teachers before you perhaps become a teacher. And anytime you can find a space where teachers are kind of engaging, be it Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever your age group, probably Instagram for you. Find a group of teachers too, because teachers are incredibly supportive of one another, and that's sort of something that you'll need to tap into in your kind of early career to really get connected. And this is one of those processes perhaps that you're closer to than we are as you're sort of reading research at the moment. This is what we're doing at the moment, and there's one article every month we share via Flipgrid, and then we have a Twitter discussion at the last Sunday of every month. So that's an idea if that's something you're into. And then there's similar spin-offs if you want to take it in a different direction or perhaps start your own. So last thing I will say, I would highly recommend you reach out to your colleagues, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're on already. Maybe consider making a second account that's just your professional account where you might post activities, lessons, thoughts that you've been having, things that you've written or videos that you've made, anything like that. And you'll soon kind of start to get a kind of collegial group even before necessarily you join a staff room and then have to build one from scratch. If you want to see any more stuff like this, I have a YouTube channel. I think I've just hit 625 videos, and sign up. Sign up, that's not what cool people say. Subscribe, there's 100 of videos kind of going into much more detail about the things that I've given you a quick flying tour of, and these are all the places you can find me. If you do join Twitter, let me know and I'll kind of connect you up with some of the sort of leading lights in primary school education and a lot of people that run early career teacher training. So good luck with the rest of your placements as they are, and your exciting times joining the profession. So good luck, and reach out if you'd like. Cheers.